November the 8th, 2020. Guys, you're looking at satellite images over the Gulf of Mexico this evening. You can see Eta is here. It's kind of got a dry center right now. 65 mile per hour storm. You go to 73 plus, you're to Cat 1. Everything is dipping out in front of the storm south. It's diving back towards Cuba and in the area between Cuba and the Yucatan Peninsula. And the models are showing this storm doing the same thing, and then turning very quickly and headed back north and east and crossing Florida somewhere below the Panhandle at this point. But again, what we're seeing is this section of the Gulf of Mexico is pulling north. The section that it's about to enter, coming off the Florida coast, is headed south. Now, one of the things that, to me, I haven't seen looking at the weather patterns yet is the reason for it slowing down. Here's the storm coming in. You got hurricane warnings up along Florida. You've got tropical storm warnings up, of course, in Cuba also. But notice it's going to be a hurricane by 1 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. Now, if you look all the way out, impact time as far as the center of circulation, 1 p.m. Friday. That's great because that gives you that morning and into the night for the storm to approach, strike, and pass before it's dark. That's critical, guys, when at least you can see. You have a lot better chance. Now, notice here, before 1 p.m. Wednesday, the storm has slowed back down to a tropical storm. Now, it must be a cool front coming in, but it's not. They're not really picking it up. But we do have some cold air and some possible snow north of here. So that may be the impact that we're seeing on that particular slowdown itself. This afternoon, 5:30 p.m., all the models are showing that dip that I was talking about with everything diving down towards Cuba. Then a loop back. Now, here's the Navy model in the purple. North of Tampa, somewhere in that area, but Tampa, when it's coming in at that area or that location just north of you, you're on the bad side of the storm, the northeast quadrant. So remember that. And the Canadian model, guys, actually has it coming in right at the same area and looping back out into the Gulf. Then drifting up towards Louisiana and Mississippi is a much weaker storm. Again, this may be this all may have to do with a cooler weather coming in. We'll take a couple look at a couple of models, guys. And also, I want to talk about the sun. We had one of the strongest solar flares, which when you're in solar maximum, it's not really that strong, but our shields are weak, and is an indication that we're getting going back into solar cycle 25. It's a real large sunspot. But here's the NavGem model again. Here's your location, comes in, strengthens, cuts up north of Tampa as far as center of circulation. Now, looking at the Canadian model, guys, that was the end of it. Here, it's tracking, loops down south towards Cuba, comes back up, scrapes the coast around the Tampa area, and moves back up and dissipates somewhere in the Panhandle. Guys, also a solar update. I've had a few folks ask me about a incoming CME for the last 4 or 5 days. Guys, there hasn't been one incoming. I would know it. I have all the links on our website, and we watch it. There were 2 small side bursts that were not Earth-facing or geo-effective. Now, what has happened, we've got the largest sunspot that you see in the blue and red of this solar cycle, number 25. This morning, it flashed a C6 solar flare. Not that large, but it's the largest so far of the solar cycle that's just beginning. Now, if you look at it closely, the different colors indicate that it's got 2 different magnetic configurations, and that would allow it to go from the C6 that happened this morning to an M-class flare, and it's about a 15% chance of that. There's a 40-something% chance of more of the C flares. But guys, it's the earliest flare, or the first flare of this solar cycle, and its indicator. Now, you've got about 2 weeks if you watch solar cycles, or sunspots, as it moves across the Earth-facing side of the sun. You've got almost a month's rotation, about 27 days or so, and the sunspot can last that long. But now It is Earth-facing because this satellite, called the Solar Dynamics Observatory, gives us an Earth-facing perspective. But I paused it this morning at right here at 5:17, and there's a signature like a lens flare of an X if you look closely at that spot. And that gets more intense as these flares go all the way up to X flares as we go into a new solar cycle. The again, the energy is incredible. There's a lot of little white explosions that are going on that are larger than any nuclear bomb that has ever been conceived by mankind. Several of our planets would fit into the size of the sunspot. As a matter of fact, it would take 109 of our planets, if you put it to scale, side by side, to go across the face of the sun. But guys, it's an indicator that we are going into solar cycle 25, opposite polarities from 24. But the other question, again, has not been a CME. Guys, this goes back to the 5th up till today. There's only been one flash, and that's about an hour after the C6 flare that we saw this morning, right here at 6:54. That flare had traveled from the sun about 92 million miles, and it struck the optics of LASCO C3. I paused it right there. The Earth is about 93 million miles from the sun, and these satellites usually are about 1 million miles from Earth, giving us the Earth-facing perspective. Again, nothing as far as a CME. I don't know where that's coming from, guys. But if it was happening, we have every link on BP Earthwatch, from CME trackers to this LASCO C3, C2. But this big sunspot facing Earth today for the next few days, it's saying on Space Weather, the largest sunspot of the new solar cycle, AR 2781, will be facing Earth. Any eruptions will be geo-effective or Earth-facing. So far, the sunspot has produced only C-class solar flares, but stronger eruptions are possible. It says today began with a big bang on November 8th. Giant sunspot 2781 produced the C5-6 solar flare, shown here in the photo from what we were just watching on the SDO. Notice at the bottom it does say 5.6. They're like quakes. You go up, and again, you go from there into your M flares. So this is an indicator of what we're dealing with. It says a pulse of X-rays and UV radiation ionized the top of Earth's atmosphere, causing a brief shortwave radio blackout over Australia and the Indian Ocean. Notice where the green blob is there, guys. That was the side of the Earth, and that's Asia and Australia. That it was sun-facing when that flare erupted. You can get photon burst energy at 8.2 minutes at traveling 93 million miles. It's amazing. But stronger eruptions are possible. It says it has a beta-gamma magnetic field that harbors energy for M-class flares, 10 times more intense than a C flare like we saw today. There's a 15% chance of that happening. Again, about a 40% chance of more of these C flares. But the mariners, aviators, and ham radio operators in the region may have noticed unusual propagation at frequencies below 10 megahertz. The entire episode lasted less than 20 minutes. Guys, when you're dealing with solar flares and CMEs, 20 minutes is a long time. We tracked X flares that struck Fukushima, just like this flare did, and the coronal mass ejections that followed. We saw a massive earthquake, a massive tsunami, and a nuclear disaster. But guys, that's kind of an update on the sun. There's not been any large CMEs. We will report it immediately, because if they're Earth-facing, a flare that can cause a coronal mass ejection or a filament release, then the links are on our website and we will report it. But if someone mentions it or asks me a question, I will immediately check the CME links and the solar flare links, and I would do a video. But there's been a lot of stuff going around lately, guys. It's is overhyped about this situation. Again, we're just starting into this solar cycle, but it peaks out. Well, it lasts about 11.8 years, so it peaks out in the middle of that time, a little less than 6 years. But for 2 or 3 years on both sides of that peak, we can have very strong solar activity. We've been through the last peak here on our channel, guys. We've seen amazing things come from the sun. And I still believe that when the time comes and that angel pours out that vial upon the sun and the beast kingdom goes into darkness, there will be a lot of changes. There will be a lot of human resonance that's not interfered with. And this high-pitched ringing from the different internet systems. And we've got Starlink about to crank up, and they're testing it, which is Elon Musk multi-satellite web or net around the world, around the entire planet. So again, I've always enjoyed watching the sun. There's tremendous amounts of links on our website, guys. Check it out there. But now, South Florida, be prepared. You got some bad weather coming your way. It's a heads up, guys. Be safe.